Hello, everyone, and welcome to the April 21st, 2016 edition, episode number 62 of Balls Deep Sports Talk. With me, your host, with the one and only Scotty Ball. Thank you, as always, for finding your way to the show this week. And this is a tough show for me to do. I'm just gonna put it out there right out of the gate so that we're all on the same honest communication wavelength and page together. Not only has life in general been extremely busy and hectic for me as of late, but the past 24 hours has been challenging, to say the least, to get through with a positive attitude, especially if you are a fan of the sports world or the music world, or both, as just within the past 24 hours of me recording this show here this week, we lost two legendary, iconic performers, one in the world of professional wrestling and one in the world of music. But so it is with a heavy heart and a preoccupied mind that I do this show this week in memory and honor of both Chyna and Prince. Now we will discuss them both more in detail throughout the show. Yes, I know it's a sports show and Prince technically isn't a sports figure, but this is a Minnesota based sports show, and there is no one more connected with the state of Minnesota, arguably, ever in history than Prince. And he did play at a Super Bowl halftime show. But so we will be sharing favorite memories and thoughts and feelings on both their lives and their passings. And we'll try to keep the show as positive and uplifting as possible, even though there is plenty of negative to discuss, not just the passings, but also the performance of some of my and possibly your favorite sports teams, which we'll get to here. But now, just a reminder, if you've been listening to the last week's show and the last couple weeks' show, I am going to try to keep it the best I can to that same or similar time frame here again this week. We're trying to do express editions here for at least one more week. Now, next week is going to be a huge, at least 2-hour, if not longer, episode, because next week we will be recording the show on Wednesday, which is NFL Draft Eve. I feel obligated to give you guys that and to have it on record from a time standpoint as well. But so next week on the show, we will be having our NFL draft, our 2016 NFL mock draft extravaganza, where I will take you through my personal and probably more accurate than anyone else's you're going to look up and see on the internet or see on TV, my mock draft for this upcoming draft. And there's tons of news to discuss as well in regards to the NFL draft regarding major trades, and it's not even done yet, one would think. But so like I said, we're going to be trying to keep it to another expressed size edition of Balls Deep Sports Talk here for this week, and then next week we'll be getting back in, hopefully, to the multi-hour, very in-deep, balls deep discussions on our sports topic on that show. But so let's get the outline of this week's show taken care of so that we can start hammering out these many big major topics. Like, it's the topics we've got for this week's show that we're trying to cram in are huge, hefty sized talkers. That's not to say I'm going to spend a ton of time talking about every one of them, but they're very big, popular topics for the most part, what we're going to be discussing here on this week's show. So let's go over that. What are we going to be discussing on this week's show? Well, we will certainly be discussing the NHL playoff picture, as the playoffs in pro hockey are well underway in the first round. We're almost closing up, could be closing up with, by the time I'm done recording this, actually, on a few first-round series in the NHL playoffs for Lord Stanley's Cup. Currently, the Minnesota Wild find themselves trailing the Dallas Stars in their series 3-1. So every game now here, make or break for the Minnesota Wild. Could be their last win of the season. Could be their last game of the season. Could be the last game that hopefully at least a few of the players on this roster spend wearing the Christmas colors of the Minnesota Wild, and possibly, but in my opinion, hopefully not the last time we see John Torchetti coaching this team. But plenty of hockey talk to discuss, so we will have lots of that on the show, and we will also be discussing the NBA in great length, as well as they are also into their first round of their playoffs, so we'll be getting you up to speed on all those series. Recent Wolves news regarding the signing of their new head coach and president of basketball operations, Tom Thibodeau. Apparently is how you say the name all of a sudden correctly. That's the correct pronunciation here in Minnesota, even though on a national level for 5 years the guy was referred to almost exclusively as Tom Thibodeau. Apparently now the H is no longer silent. He is here in Minnesota. So I don't know. It depends on who you ask. To me, he's still Tom Thibodeau. Like, if that's what the national media refers to you as for years, that's your name. Okay, like you set them straight out of the gate, or your SOL here 5 years later. Don't be mad when I pronounce it the way that you let them all these years. But anyway, they hired Coach Tom Thibodeau. Apparently, that's what we're going with here in Minnesota for pronunciation. Anyway, if you listen to K-Fan and stuff. And like I said, not only is he going to be the head coach for the next 5 years, at least that's the monster contract he signed, but he's also going to be the president of basketball operations. So plenty of transition, change, and opinions to discuss on the T-Wolves' current decisions and their direction and expectations in the future. And we'll also touch just a little bit as well, talking NBA basketball, on Kobe Bryant's farewell game last week, where he dropped 60 in a game-winning effort to take his final bow. We'll also be talking Major League Baseball, checking in on my and possibly your Minnesota Twins, off to a terrible 0-9 start. Won like 3 games in a row. We'll check and see where their record is exactly right now. Last I checked, they were beating up on the Brewers tonight after losing to them last night. But so that'd be good. You got to beat some crappy teams, and the Brewers are also a crappy team like the Twins have been thus far this season. But we'll be discussing some news, some front office hirings, bringing some old familiar names and faces back to work within the organization, as well as what's going right and what's going wrong for the Minnesota Twins. And we'll also take just a quick brief look around Major League Baseball, see who's doing hot and who's doing not. We'll take a quick peek into NFL football. Like I said, next week the show will be huge NFL themed in preparation for next week's NFL draft, which starts on Thursday. The first round gets underway. Vikings currently slated to pick number 23. I don't think we'll get too much into player names and evaluation when it comes to our Vikings talk in regards to the draft. But we will discuss just a few general things to either hope for or expect, or both, in regards to their strategy and approach, as well as discussing a few more of the names that they have re-signed to new one-year or multi-year contracts in the past week. We'll also take a look around the league with big draft news, as both the first and second picks in the NFL draft have been traded. And it was crazy. That was absolutely crazy. We're a week away yet. So we've got big news there to discuss, as well as Johnny Manziel news. Big, bad news for Johnny Manziel. Just continues to get worse for him. We'll also most likely take a quick peek into the world of the WWE, getting kind of re-familiarized with who and what's going on there, as well as next Sunday's Payback pay-per-view, which is generally a filler, but we might take a brief glance at that this week. If not this week, for sure next week we'll definitely be definitely be discussing the career, life, and memories and impact of Chyna, aka Joanie Laurer was her real name, who passed away yesterday. Um, in addition to Prince passing away today. Very sad 24 hours, like I said, for sports. And music fans, we may peek quickly at PGA and NASCAR, although those are the first two on the chopping block, should we need to scratch stuff for time. And of course, we will be discussing UFC news, as there's been big news there as well, primarily regarding champion Conor McGregor, how Dana White feels about him, his participation or non-participation in UFC 200, his sudden and immediate early retirement or non-retirement, all kinds of crazy rumor and news-related stuff in the world of UFC as well. So, like I said, we've got topics of major size and girth to try and tackle and ride off into the sunset. You like what I did there on this week's show. But just a friendly reminder that, again, the clock will ultimately be the boss in this week's show content and length, as opposed to my notebook and the contents in it, which are usually the boss in what goes into the show and how long it runs. Well, knowing that we're on a time crunch, I should probably get some quick plugs out of the way, and then we better get into our hit opening segment. Quick plugs, of course, consist of connecting with me on social media, whether that be via Facebook or Twitter. I am on both. I prefer Twitter, but I'm on both, and I share a lot of sports news. Is primarily what I use those social media sites for. You don't get a whole lot of my personal feedback. Every once in a while you will on stuff, but for the most part it's sharing sports stories with you. And if you would like to connect with me on social media, if you're on Facebook, simply search Scotty-Ball. I have 2 pages, a friends page and a public figures page. Make sure to like and follow and friend both of them. And if you're on Twitter, you can follow the show at BDST Show. And the added bonus of following the show on Twitter is you get to witness some of my epic Twitter rants and battles from the safety of wherever you are with your mobile or internet connected device, because I get into some pretty good, fun, entertaining, often heated debates. We'll call them debates on Twitter. So added bonus to that. And of course, continue to check out the show on SoundCloud, YouTube, my personal favorite, the free Spreaker app, and also within a week or two, hopefully, I'm hoping next week we can get the big show on there, Thursday nights on our new internet radio station, glradio.net. And final plug here before we officially kick things off, make sure to visit VikingsDigitalDiaries.com this week to check out my most recent interview for our pre-draft preview special series that we've got running up here until the draft yet, where I was able to sit down and talk for about 15 minutes or so here today with former Minnesota Golden Gopher defensive back and future NFL defensive back Eric Murray. So if you are a football fan or a Gopher fan or just a Scotty Ball fan maybe, make sure you visit VikingsDigitalDiaries.com. Check that out. Spread the word while you're at it on what I'm doing with VikingsDigitalDiaries.com and how people can enjoy that themselves with your friends, co-workers, neighbors, family members, enemies, strangers. Just every 10th person you see in Walmart or Target the next time you go. Whatever. Word of mouth is the only advertising that I have with anything I'm doing, whether it be from my mouth or from someone else's. I'm not sure if that came out right, but anyway, if you could take the time to check that out and let other people that you think might enjoy it know about it as well, I would greatly appreciate it. Can't thank Eric Murray enough for taking time out of his extremely busy, crazy schedule in life right now to talk some football with me this week.